sometimes we think that our communication, what we're observing or what we're watching might not impact us as much as what we say or what someone directly says to us. But that research showed that when you're watching something negative, whether it's a movie, so for example, an argument, violence on the TV, or even listening to an argument on a radio show, what is happening in your brain physiologically is the same as what would happen if you were directly involved in that. So those things that are in our environment are critical, and we have to be very careful what we're allowing to come into that environment, because it is playing a role in how we move forward in life.
Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome to Unleash Thyself, a podcast where we journey into the depths of personal transformation, spirituality, and growth. I am your host, Konstantin Morun, and today we have an incredible guest joining us, Kimberly Wilkerson. She's a speech-language pathologist turned entrepreneur, and Kimberly is the creator of Intelligent Fashion, token clothing company, which elevates mindset and transforms the lives of the wearer and observer. In her own words, she is a fusion of clinician and creative who finds joy in merging the unlikely. Today, we will dive into the power of words and language, intelligent fashion. What is it? Why is it important? And other amazing topics. So with that, let's welcome Kimberly to the show. Kimberly, how are you doing?
Oh, I am fantastic. Thank you for that warm welcome, Konstantin. I appreciate it.
Of course. I'm excited to talk to you about intelligent fashion because until last week when you and I chatted, I had no idea what it was. And I'm a big fan of the power of language because I've seen it in my life and I've seen it in the life of my clients, how removing words from our vocabulary and bringing other words in has such a massive power. So maybe let's start there. What's your take as a language pathologist?
Sure.
Around the
Thank
power
you
of
for
words.
asking. Yes. So, I don't think that we completely understand the power of communication and the power of words until there is something that limits that. So as a speech language pathologist, I have worked with both youth, young kids, and adults with communication disorders. And it's interesting that because of what I have done for work for so many years, I can see the limits that communication disorders or deficiencies have on people. But so many of us don't have that. And so we don't even understand the power of communication until we lose it or it's severely limited. So I love the fact as a clinician that I can work to help people have their voice. Beyond that, within this realm, we know because of neuroscience and all of the study in positive psychology that when we look at language, words, how we communicate, and I'm going to say nonverbal, which means no words, but certainly communication, as well as the power of those words, those utterances that come out of our mouth. They have significant power on our brain and thus our bodies, and thus how we show up in the world, and thus our outcomes. And again, we can go and look at all of that research with functional MRIs over the last 15, 20 years to see what certain words will do to the physiology of our brain, how our brain responds to that. And there's more and more research coming out, I feel, almost every year. So it's an exciting time to understand more about how language impacts our brain and thus our entire being.
Wow, powerful, beautiful, Kimberly. Thank you for describing it like that. And let me ask you this then. I see, for those just listening, Kimberly is wearing a beautiful shirt on. It has a lot of powerful words on it. And you can see now that you raise yourself up a bit, it's kind of mirrored, right? Where
Yes.
I can read it, and then I would imagine you can read it when you go into the mirror. Why are those type of words important?
So these are all what we would classify as positive words. There are also words that I did some market research on when I launched the first line, which is a line of pajamas. I presented multiple words to women and I said, what would you most want to have on pajamas where the words are actually touching your skin? The top 3 phrases were, I am beautiful, I am worthy, and I am loved. With our t-shirts, I added a couple more of those words that were in the top of the voting that happened with that market research. And so these tees have I am loved, I am beautiful, I am worthy. It also includes I am divine and I am strong. And so when you just say that word by itself, right, there is a feeling that comes to you. There is something that happens within your brain because it's a positive word, because it gives you confidence, because there is light and truth associated with that word. And so it starts to impact neurologically what's happening in your brain.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I'd imagine you mentioned something key at the beginning as well around the fact that speaking or interpreting things, communication doesn't just happen by you uttering words or listening to someone talk to you. It also happens by your posture and everything that you do in life. I believe, I forget the stats now, but I think words are only like what, 30% of something like that, around like what we actually absorb from someone else. So it's like how you say, the intonation, like all those things. Tell us a bit more about that and what you found around it, and how the type of wording you have on you can help in all of those areas.
Sure. And so, in way of nonverbal communication, what you were talking about, yes, our posture, the tone of the voice that we use, our facial expressions. You know, it's fascinating. Again, I won't get into all of the research behind it, but it's fascinating to see where slight changes in our facial expressions will have completely different meanings that are interpreted by the observer. So, nonverbal communication is a huge piece of how we interact with each other.
Yeah.
Now, we know that. And at the same time, although we can communicate much through nonverbal communication, you and I are speaking. We're using words. We have what's called oral expression as we talk, and certainly written expression is what we use as we write and share ideas. And so being very intentional about the oral language that we choose to use, those words, what we say to someone else, not just impacts that person, but also impacts you. You know, Constantine, there's a really, I think, important study that was done. The research came out on this just a few years ago, and there's been some research since then too, where sometimes we think that our communication, what we're observing or what we're watching, might not impact us as much as what we say or what someone directly says to us. But that research showed that when you're watching something negative, whether it's a movie, whether you're, so for example, an argument, violence on the TV, or even listening to an argument on a radio show, what is happening in your brain physiologically is the same as what would happen if you were directly involved in that. So those things that are in our environment are critical, and we have to be very careful what we're allowing to come into that environment, because it is playing a role in how we move forward in life.
Yes, so powerful. And I agree with you, because I've noticed in my own life, as I've gone on my journey over the last few years, I cut down on the amount of TV I watch. I mean, I don't watch the news anymore. I barely watch a show or movies. And I see a big difference, because when I do end up watching, I can feel a difference in how I feel, essentially, during and
Sure.
then potentially after. So I can attest to some of that, and it's powerful. So why intelligent fashion? Or actually, maybe let's define it. What is it? What's intelligent fashion?
I love that question, actually. So, you know, as we look at definitions, number one, intelligence, as spoken of in the scriptures, means light and truth. When we look at a dictionary definition, for example, 1828, Webster's Dictionary, Oxford Dictionary, when we think of maybe the layman's term of intelligence, we think of learning or adding skills and knowledge, using skills and knowledge. And so, as I was designing the lines that we have so far, and what I will do with all of our lines, actually, I wanted to try to incorporate something that we can use to motivate us, to empower us, to elevate us in an everyday task that we have. We wear clothes every day, right? And we all have different styles and different preferences. I certainly do. But I thought, how can we use this platform of a task that is required every single day to actually do something in our lives to empower us, to elevate our minds, to edify our minds. And so that's why, with all of the experience I had as a speech language pathologist, I took those pieces and I merged them as I launched this fashion company, because I want to be able to edify the world. I really do. I know that there can be more light brought forward. I know that people can reach their potential and purpose when they have language that they're using that allows them to do that. I know that people can feel that purpose as they're saying these phrases and as they're thinking about them.
So, speaking of that, right, you said when you say those phrases, the fact that you're wearing the shirt on when, let's say, you go by a mirror,
Mm-hmm.
do you find yourself involuntarily perhaps saying those words to yourself as you see the reflection?
Yes. And I won't even say it's involuntary for me. It's fully voluntary, right? I'm like, yes, I am strong. I am divine. I am worthy. I am beautiful. I am loved. So when I go into the bathroom and look in a mirror in my room, or, in the house somewhere, in an office, I'm looking at these words and I'm saying them. And I'm also thrilled that because of the design of this, where you can read them as well, purposely and intentionally designed, where someone else can read them as they're talking to me. And that phrase of I am worthy, I am loved, immediately goes to their mind. And so being able to share this is not only empowering to me, but it's helping me uplift others as well.
Yes, right? Because it is like you're seeing right now, those that can see it, it says I am, which means that whenever someone reads it, it's in first person. So you're reading it for yourself. There's power in that. You did mention that on the pajamas, and I saw that on your website as well. They are reversible, and you can wear the prints where they touch the skin. Why is it important for them to
Yeah.
touch the skin?
So when I designed the pajamas, I purposely had the I am statements put on the interior side of the pajamas, although you can wear the top inside out so you can see it in the mirror, other people can see that. The reason I did that was twofold. Number one, wearing pajamas is an intimate experience typically, and we think of coziness and getting ready for sleep and winding down and stillness, and so I wanted that language to be as close to the wearer as possible. Along with that, there was research done by Masaru Emoto several years ago. There's been more research since then on the power of language with water and music, even with water. What happens to water when it has something given to it that would change perhaps its cellular structure? And so what Emoto did is he took both positive and negative words and he froze water crystals on a petri dish, and then he labeled each of these petri dishes with either negative or positive words, and he put the words facing inside the dish. And so I thought, what, we're about 60% water, all of us. And what would that do if we could have those I am statements of power and truth touching our skin and emanating that truth into ourselves? There's been lots of research done on water. A lot of people have done what they call rice experiments, and you can find those all over YouTube, et cetera. Little,
Yes.
right? And so I know the power of language and what happens as we use language in a powerful way. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to create that experience for women and have them be as full of those statements of love and beauty and worthiness as they possibly could be.
Mm, I love this so much, Kimberly. That's awesome. What have women that have started to wear those pajamas say to you? Like, what's the type of feedback you're getting? Like, are they seeing immediate effects in their life essentially?
Yeah, I had one person tell me that she was getting ready. She had a presentation, maybe an interview the next day, and she wore those to bed, and it gave her more confidence. I had another woman tell me that her daughter actually started taking the pajamas and wearing them and would wear them, all evening, because they can be lounge wear as well as pajamas at night. And so she would wear them as soon as she got home from school. And that opened a conduit for she and her mom to have a conversation about self-esteem, because the daughter was struggling with some self-esteem issues that the mom wasn't completely aware about, and it opened that path for that conversation. And so that's exactly, when I hear this feedback, that is exactly what I want happening. That is exactly why I why all of us as entrepreneurs go through the sweat, blood, and tears, right? Of launching a business and bringing a service to our fellow men because we want to improve their lives. And so I see that in small ways. I certainly
Yes.
want that expanded. And so that's why I'm pushing forward with getting the clothing into retailers and in front of people, because I want women to have these opportunities to improve their mindset.
Yeah, I love that. I love the Kimberly. And we'll have the links, of course, to your website, and we'll talk more about the company in a minute here. But one thing that came up, because I saw on your LinkedIn, you posted something about finishing your garden, and then even on I guess you would call them the stickers or the labels for the
Mm-hmm.
plants, you wrote some beautiful words on it. What prompted that? What was the logic behind it? Because it's
Sure.
beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I just planted about a week and a half ago or so. And I've done this actually for a few years now, where when I put the posts in, the markers, the wooden markers showing what seeds are where, so I make sure I know what's growing in that spot. I put the name, so arugula or spinach or radish. But then where the post actually goes into the ground, I wrote grow on one side, and on the other side, I wrote love and gratitude. And one of the reasons why I wrote, again, it's twofold. One of the reasons why I wrote those specific words is in Dr. Masaru Emoto's research, love and gratitude had some of the most beautifully formed crystals when he looked at water.
Mm,
They were the highest energy, the highest level. That's why I chose those specific words. But I also feel that as I stuck those in there, there is life in that soil. There is life with those seeds, right? I mean, you've heard this, people will talk to their plants. I believe in that. Again, I
yes.
believe that all of our words have energy. I mean, we could get into quantum science, which we won't do, but we could go down there and talk about energy and how that comes to one point and then goes out. And so that's why I did that, is because I do believe that it can help those plants grow. And it certainly reminds me, as I see those words, to take care of and nourish that garden.
Yes, I love it so much. And like you said, we could go down a path. Maybe that we'll save that for episode 2, but we dive deeper in the quantum physics of all of it. And I keep seeing your shirt, right, which is beautiful, because I'm like, it's triggering certain things to come up for me. And I remember something that with my clients, every time I go through a case study at the end of our 3, 4, 6 months together, I ask them, what were some of your favorite exercises that we did together? And I have a plethora of exercises backed by neuroscience and psychology that we use, from writing things down, from doing inventories in your life and whatnot. But the one that always comes up, Kimberly, is a simple one. It's the most basic and the one that makes people cringe the most. It's this exercise in the morning, and then you progress and you do it as much as you can. When you go to the bathroom, you look in the mirror and you look yourself in the eyes and say 4 magical words, which is your name. So in my case, it'll be Constantine. I love you. And it's cringeworthy at the beginning. I hated doing it.
Uh-huh.
Now I can't go by a mirror without doing it, and it always puts a huge smile on my face. And almost pretty much every client I've worked with through the case studies, that's the number one exercise they loved, and it's the
Hmm.
number one they didn't want to do. So that
Sure.
reminded me, because the power of words, all you're saying is "I love you," and it literally shifts your entire relationship with yourself over a few days to weeks for most people. And I'd imagine what your shirts do and what you're talking about is pretty much the same thing.
Yes. And I love you sharing that, Constantine. I will second that. There was a time, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, where I was doing a meditation where for 5 minutes on my meditation mat, I would repeat, I love and accept you, Kimberly. And when I first started that, it was almost shocking to me to see how much I struggled with that at the beginning. I mean, I would say I love and accept you, Kimberly, but you can do better, right? I mean, I had to have
Ah,
like, I would have to say more words, because I'm like, I can't say that about myself. Like, it was really interesting. So I completely understand you and listeners and people that you've worked with. by how difficult initiating those words are. Because we grew up in this society where as a kid we might say that and believe it and believe that we're the superhero, and right, we have these dreams and these goals, and then through growing up and experiences, we don't want to be too prideful, or we don't want to be too selfish, or we don't want to be too overbearing, whatever it might be. And experiences that we have where others or the world might be telling us that we're not worthy, that we're not loved, that we're not good enough. So it's really hard to say that. But I think those are some of the most powerful words that you can say, because it's hard to be able to fully love others when you can't fully love
Yes,
yourself, right?
yes, yes, yes,
And
yes.
so that is also a reason behind these statements, is for people to know it, to believe it, to feel it, because as that works in them, again, on a cellular level in the brain, but also in their soul and their heart, they are able to be more compassionate, more loving, more helpful to others. And Constantine, I'll throw in just another piece of research really
Of
quick
course.
here. With our brain research, and this is interesting and it might kind of sound feel good, but again, we have this neuroscience to show it. When we are self-critical, the biggest way to overcome that is through self-love, self-appreciation, self-forgiveness, and doing that, repeating that every single day. So when you have your clients repeat those words, again, they're rewiring their brain
Exactly.
so they can overcome that self-criticism. When people are wearing tees and pajamas and other clothing that we bring forward, they are rewiring that brain so they can overcome self-criticism. And with this, there's correlation between these practices and being able to express more gratitude towards others and have more compassionate communication towards others. So as we improve ourselves, we touch and influence and impact everyone around us. And it's it's what makes us fly, right? It's what makes us happy. It is what brings us joy.
Absolutely. Love the Kimberly. Hey, it's Konstantin here, and I want to take a brief moment to truly thank you for being a part of this incredible journey of transformation. You are the reason we are creating this content. I see you and I appreciate you. Your support truly means the world to me. I want to ask you for a small favor. I'd love for you to join our mission by hitting like, subscribe, or leaving a thoughtful comment or review. Your engagement helps others discover these insights, and together we can continue to unlock the power of authenticity and personal transformation. Thank you for being a part of this movement. Now, back to the episode. And I smile here because I look back at my life, and I'm about to turn 41 here in a few days. And I look back at most of my life, I never pay attention to words. And it's funny because people will tell me it's not what you say, is how you say it. Because I used to pride myself in being very direct, very honest, which of course, comes with its own challenges, especially if you didn't do the work to realize that words actually have a lot of power, good or bad or indifferent, whatever definition you want to give it. And as as I went through my life, I realized that I was using words at times to hurt people, right? Because I had a quick mind and a quick tongue, and I
Mm-hmm.
could do that. But it wasn't conscious. That was the really interesting thing. For me, at least, it wasn't like, oh, I want to hurt this person. It was more like they hurt me. So I was like, okay, well, it's going to happen. This is what I say. So I'm curious to see your take now when it comes to negative words, because you talked about the research and what you've done your own research into what words people would like to see the most. But what are some words that we would want to eliminate or reduce in our vocabulary, if any?
Sure. So here's another interesting piece of research. The word no. Under functional MRI, we see that when someone will turn a page and when that word is presented to them, even in multiple versions of that word, no, 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 that our heart rate immediately goes up. Okay. Our
Mm.
blood pressure immediately raises. There are physiological things that in a second will happen in our brains because we're preparing whatever we sometimes we need the word. We need a no. We need to be able to, in way of protection, to be able to say that word. And so it's not that it's a bad word. However, it's important to understand what that word physiologically does to us. And so when there are negative words, similar to no, right? What's happening in our brain is that the deeper structures of our brain are elevated. And so we have all of these different stress hormones happening. So think about a fight, a verbal fight, or voices raising, etc. There are things that are happening. You're getting ready to that natural response of fight or flight or freeze, right? And so your body's preparing for that. And on occasion, we need that. Again, it helps protect us. But when you're in constant negativity and you're bringing up those stress responses from that amygdala again and again and again, that starts to impact what is happening with brain function, how you're thinking, your mental clarity and acuity, how you respond to other people. That then over time actually will impact your organs. And so there is this whole body, whole system impact. And again, a lot of people can link when we look at medical research, there is a lot of linkage between different disease processes to what's happening in our minds, how we're perceiving something, how our emotions are being handled or not handled. And so all of it relates.
It does, absolutely. And I have seen that in my own life and what I've done myself over the last few years, and what I work with some people on as well, is not removing, but at least understanding why we use certain words. Like, for example, if I'll say, oh, I try to do this, or I'll try to do this, versus I will do this, or I get to do this, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
things like, I want to do this, but I don't have the time, right? So, like, including the words no in there, essentially, right? Or anything to do with, I have to do this. I have to go to work. I have to do this. I have to do this. And replacing that with something like, I get to do it, right? Which is takes it
Yes.
from something that's disempowering to something that's very empowering. So I'm curious what you've seen there, and how perhaps, if you even if you're bringing that into your clothing line.
So let me go back to that research because I don't
Mhm.
think I finished my thought with that with
Okay,
Masaru
yeah.
Emoto, right? As he labeled those petri dishes and then published his findings with the negative words, the ice crystals that he looked at under microscope were very distorted. They weren't pretty. You'd look at
Mhm.
them and be like, that's kind of ugly. That's what you would say as you looked at them. And those were all of the negative words like hate, envy, greed, anything that we would associate with negativity. Those positive words, on the other hand, love, beauty, thank you, I love you. Those phrases and words had beautiful crystals, beautifully formed crystals. And so we can look at that piece of research and understand what those negative words do. Certainly, when it comes to clothing, I'm not going to put any negative words on
Of
clothing
course.
at all, right? Just positive words. But I do like talking about the fact that we chase darkness with light. Instead of interacting with darkness, instead of having a rebuttal all the time to someone or a situation, because our natural inclination is to, like you mentioned, if we have quick, sharp tongues, we want to respond, right? We want to use that power that we do have through words. However, as we do it in a way that is at the level of contention with someone else that they're at, then we're not actually creating positive change for anyone. All we're doing is bringing more darkness in when we think of light versus
Yes.
darkness. And so, how do we combat that? How do we shift that? Again, we chase darkness with light. So, if we can infuse this powerful, positive language, compassionate language in everything that we say, whether that is spoken language or written language, then we bring light. That energy that is coming into the world is light filled, and that is what dispels the darkness.
That's beautiful. I love it. So it's chasing the darkness away, essentially one word at a time, perhaps, and it's
I
it's
like
beautiful to see. Now, your company, Token Clothing Company, right? So you talked about the pajamas, the shirt you're wearing right now. Tell us a bit more about your vision for what you're doing right now, and why did you give up a career that you were in for a while to do this now, which some people would be like, wow, it's outside of your expertise.
Yeah, yeah, and I appreciate that question. So I'll start, with the why. So even back in graduate school to become a speech language pathologist, I was drawing dress designs in the margins of my notes. Now, I am not a great artist, and so those those designs did not look great, but I was using words to explain what I wanted. And I knew at that time that I wanted to have a fashion company. And that was almost 20 years ago, which is crazy to me that it has been this long. I also knew that I wanted to be a speech pathologist and that that was right for my path. And so I pursued that career in science, being a clinician, but also along the way learned more about the field of fashion, took some drawing classes so I could become a little bit better at drawing designs, learned as much as I could, always thinking, well, when's the right time to launch this? When will be the right time? And it just never felt like it was. Although I will say this, back in 2017, I launched just a t-shirt company called My Freedom, My Family T-shirts with a friend. That gave me some good business acumen to actually have that foundation to move forward. Again, not knowing that I would launch Token Clothing Company. And there came a point, it's been now about 3 years ago, where I had this opportunity to go down to the US Virgin Islands and be a speech language pathologist down there, which I thought would be fantastic because I love scuba diving and snorkeling. And I thought, this is a dream job as an SLP. But I also was at this point where I knew if I don't move forward with a company, that's okay. But my trajectory in life is going to go somewhere else. And I debated in my mind what I needed to do. And I thought, you know what, Kimberly, you can always go to the Virgin Islands later. And so I decided to get into the prototyping and just give everything that I could to Token Clothing and determine what I wanted to do with that. I didn't know at that moment I would be merging language with fashion. I just knew I needed to move forward. But all of those pieces came together as I started brainstorming and really getting clear on what I wanted and the lines that I wanted to bring. I knew that was right to merge those two, especially the language piece, because I knew something about it. Fashion, I didn't know tons about, but guess what? You get to learn, right?
You get to
As an
learn.
entrepreneur, there's so many things that you don't know, but you learn along the way. And I've always felt that I'm not what I would call a fashion designer. I'm an entrepreneur that uses the platform of fashion to elevate and empower women. That's what it comes down to. And so, what I want to do with this company, where I see it going, is into the world, being able to have global markets because we're using language. This can be translated into any language that a wearer would want. And so, my desire is to work with retailers and buyers who have a global influence so we can get this clothing and this brand, this idea, this understanding, the research behind it to women throughout the world.
Incredible story there, Kimberly. So many beautiful parts. I want to reemphasize that, one of the many amazing parts you mentioned there is like getting started without having all the answers, without having all the pieces of the puzzle. And that's incredible to see because, like you said, everything kind of came together once you started, once you
Right.
got courage to go in. And your vision to be able to get this across the culture divide, right, the language divide, it's beautiful. I wonder if you're aware of any of this because I haven't seen any myself. Has there been research in language done in other languages other than English to see if it correlates, if it stands true?
Yeah. I love that question. And I would say, I bet there has been. I'm not aware of it. I haven't looked at that other language. Um, Based upon what I know with our development and how we develop from with oral language and written language and even development from birth, I would imagine that the same, when we look at neuroscience, that the same outcomes are true regardless of the language that you're actually using in way of foreign languages. And so, but
Yes.
I think that's a great question. I may have to look
Yeah.
into that, Constantine.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, me too. Because that's intriguing. And it got me thinking when you're talking about the power of the language, right? And the research they've done when the scientists wrote on a piece of paper a word and then faced it against a petri dish to get the answers. I wonder how much of the intention and the scientists' own understanding of the language had a play in that, because we know
Mm.
everything is energy, right?
Yes.
So of course, names have energy, words have energy, letters have energy, and I wonder if it's impacted by the person saying those words. Because if I grew up in an environment where a word has a positive connotation, and you grew up in one where the same word has a negative connotation, and there's many words that could fall into the category, I wonder what the effect of that would be on
Yeah.
ice crystals or someone, right? Because if
Right.
I feel something is
Right.
good, then anyway,
That's
that's
yes. I'm sure there would be an effect. I have no doubt there would be. So that's really interesting.
yeah, because that might be
Oh.
something that we need to research. But coming back to the beautiful clothing line you have, so you have the pajamas, you have the shirts.
Mhm.
What else are you working on?
So right now I'm designing a hoodie. I know that that's fun.
Mm.
Lots of women loves hoodies. So I'm working on that. I also have ideas and files ready for an athletic line, right? Thinking about women and working out and trying to improve their bodies and become healthier, and how language can certainly support that. And then, two, I also think of this, but I know that I will need future team members. I would love to bring forward professional wear for women that doesn't look like this, doesn't have like a graphic tee where the words are all over, but they are in strategic spots, touching the skin, reminding that woman of who she is as she moves forward in her day, completing the professional tasks that she has. And so there are many ideas up here, and even some on paper. And we'll get there. We'll get there. I just need to grow right now with what I have.
Yes, I mean that's exciting. I mean all the things you're doing makes my heart smile. And I know you mentioned something beautiful to me last week, that you also support a very powerful cause through your clothing line. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I would love to. So, our philanthropic side of Token Clothing Company is what we call Pay It Forward with Pajamas. And right now, we're partnering with Refuge for Women, which is America's largest long term rehabilitation center for women who have been sex trafficked. When I launched this company, I knew that I wanted a philanthropic arm of it. And so, as I was thinking about how I could best fulfill that and serve a population that most needed this language, that's what came to my mind, was women who have experienced great trauma. And so at Refuge for Women, they have provided names, and some of the names have been changed, of those people who they're serving. But when you come to our website, you're able to read the hopes and the dreams of these women, despite the horrendous circumstances that they have faced and are overcoming. They still have hopes and dreams just like we all do. And so you have the opportunity as a customer to gift a pair of the pajamas, the pajamas with purpose line, to one of these recipients. And equal to that, you get to write a personal note of encouragement to this woman. And then Token Clothing Company will fulfill both the pajamas and the note and send it where it needs to go.
Wow, what a beautiful cause. I love it, Kimberly.
Yeah,
What's
thank
the
you.
website where people can find all of this information?
Yeah, so we are at Token Clothing Co. That's CO, tokenclothingco.com.
Beautiful. I will have it in the show notes for those that want to just copy it or click through it. Kimberly, has been fantastic. I'm curious, we've covered a lot of different topics. Is there anything that comes up for you that you'd like to share with us that perhaps we haven't covered yet that may be important?
I would just say maybe one, because I like sharing strategies, and I know you share lots of strategies,
Yes,
Constantine,
no,
with
please
with
go
your
ahead.
audience. So, because people will say, "Well, what's the first thing I can do? Like, how do I change this?" And so, meaning our thoughts, our mindset. And so I say, "Here's what you need to do. Number one," and again, research will point towards this. We have to become aware of our thoughts. We
Yes.
have to know those repeated thoughts that are going through our mind every day. In fact, there's some research out of Canadian University just a few years ago that showed that with what we call thought worms, maybe a phrase of thoughts, that oftentimes we are repeating 90 to 95% of the same thoughts day after day after day. And about 80% of those thoughts are negative.
Yes.
So, in order to change that, we have to become aware of what those thoughts are. And I know for me, that's meant that I will take a few moments. I might have a journal next to me as I'm working. And as I'm paying attention, I write down every thought that comes to my mind, whether it's positive or negative. And with those negative thoughts, I go back, I look at them, I categorize them. Because I want to keep the positive ones going, but I categorize the negative ones. And what I will do is I will cross it out. For example, this happens with women a lot, right? I'm ugly. No, you're not. Right? So with that, you're going to cross that out. I am beautiful. I am gorgeous. I am lovely. Whatever phrase makes you feel good and gives you power, you write that phrase out. And then I take this collection of new positive thoughts that I have, and I will post them somewhere where I am reading them. Personally, for me, I've actually made a audio not a video, but an audio version where I'm saying the words. I've recorded myself saying them, and then I put it to music and I listen to it in the morning. Even for all that I know, Constantine, in my work behind this, I'm still human. There's still negativity that comes in,
Yes.
depending on the experience, depending on the circumstance. There might be that negative phrase that comes in. So I have to be vigilant in being aware. And then I have to, what I call refashion. I don't call it reframe. I call it refashion, because refashioning brings, I'm a clothing company person, and it brings in color and texture and light. And I love the word refashion. So I refashion my thoughts. I repeat them again and again, and I believe them, right? I see them happening. I see who that is. If it is, I am beautiful, I see me as the best version of myself, as the loveliest version of myself, wearing beautiful clothing and acting in a beautiful way. I see that, I say it, and I feel it. And I do those things so I can become it. So it is that repetition and intensity that we know helps with that subconscious mind, with those thoughts that are on auto. That's how we get in there and we change it. We decrease that wiring, that neural wiring that's happened with thoughts that we've had for years and years. We replace it with thoughts that we want, outcomes that we want, and we believe that. We use all of our senses to create that, and that's who we become.
I love that so much. Thank you for bringing this up. This resonates so deeply with me. It's a few of the strategies I use with myself and clients, very similar to that. And speaking of strategies, I'm curious to talk about this with you then. So we're looking at, you write down your thoughts and beliefs, whatever comes up, which is powerful because I think they argue that up to like 95% of our thoughts and beliefs are subconscious, which means that most of them you're not aware of. And like the research you pointed out to, right? They said that most of them are negative and they repeat themselves. What I have found in my experience is that replacing them, like you said, right, it's the first step. It's amazing. But if there are some that keep coming up, or when those that keep coming up, even when you're replacing them, to break them down to their lowest level, meaning asking questions, why, what, how type questions, until you get to the illusion point, as I call it, meaning that you get to a point where you're like, you said the words, I'm ugly, right? Okay, why do I think I'm ugly? Right? Then something comes up and then you start breaking them down further, and it gets to a point where one of two things happen in my experience. You realize it's a story of someone else, so it's not yours, or it has no ground to stand on, and now it's easily replaced by something else. Now, I have an analytical mind, so when I started doing this, for me, it wasn't enough to just cross it out and replace it. I needed to understand why it was showing up in the first place. And right now, through my practice years later, when I catch one of those, it's quickly that I can break it down. I'm like, oh, it has nothing to stand on. Okay, bye bye. And all of a sudden, my mood shifts within seconds. So I'm curious what you have seen in your work and everything else. Like, what's the power of asking questions? I guess it's a question.
Yeah. No, I love that. I'm so glad you brought that up. Uh, it's we have to label the emotion, right? We have to label what's going on. And so with those thoughts, just like you said, in asking those questions, you get down to the brunt, that root cause for those thoughts. So many of us think thoughts are real. But guess what? They're just thoughts. Just back to our example of, I am ugly. That's a thought. That doesn't mean it's true. That doesn't mean it's real. So I love that you said if you go through those WH questions, which is interesting because that's a strategy as a speech pathologist that we use to help people with language, knowing how to answer those questions, who, what, when, where, why. As we ask those questions, we start to, I think, peel back those layers
Yes.
of what's really going on, and we disseminate that ball of energy. I'm a very visual person, so we disseminate that negative ball of energy into a place where we can more accurately look at those layers and those pieces before we can send them on their way, right?
Exactly.
And yeah, and have that inner dialogue and that inner conversation with ourselves. WH questions, I believe, help us get to truth a little bit better, right? As we're seeking truth in any way, as we're seeking for truth, we need to be asking questions that lead us to that truth. And that's certainly part of how we need to look at our language and our inner talk.
Yes, I love that. And it's what comes up for me that it's your truth. Whatever your truth is, that's what you're going to come up to, right? Not someone else's, because we're so full of someone else's stories that we have internalized.
Right.
And this allows us to break it down. And you were talking about refashioning, or as I say, rewiring the brain. That's what we're doing when we're breaking those things down. What I have found, of course, repetition is the key to a lot of amazing things in your life, right? So the more you repeat that, the more your brain is going to go like, cool, I can do this on repeat. So it becomes one of those subconscious things you do. And not by all of a sudden, 9 out of 10 times, you won't even have to bother to catch yourself because you're going to do it automatically. And that's the beauty in practicing something like this.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for I love that you brought up the questions, because that's something that I need to do a little bit better with myself. So thank you for that.
You're welcome, Kimberly. Well, thank you for the beautiful conversation. As we're coming up here to the end, is there anything else that comes up for you that you'd like to share, or maybe parting thoughts for the audience members?
Sure. I think in way of sharing ideas and research, I've been able to share all of that. My parting thought would be, don't give up, right? Continue forward, because there will be breakthroughs. There will be change. There will be light. I know even in my own experience, sometimes I think all of us feel, well, I've done this and I've done this and I've done this. And where is that change? And I always just think of, I'll go back to gardening, right? Some of those seeds that you plant. I mean, I'm crazy. I go out there and I look at the soil every single day. I'm like, where are these plants? I'm like, where are they at? And sometimes I'll see the little leaves, but the things that I love the most, I'm like, come on, you've got to grow, right? You don't know where you're at in that process. Remember, it's a process. I'm someone who lacks patience. And so if I put in practices and I want to see those results almost immediately, but there is that process. So don't give up. Keep going, keep fine tuning. Know that there is change happening, even if you don't see it in that moment that you think you should. Because if we can look back, it's this will be the final image I leave. It's kind of the person who starts rowing to the island, right? They're out in the ocean and they're looking at how far they have to go. But what they really need to do is look behind them and see how far they've come. And that gives them that motivation and that understanding of, but look what I've gained. Look what has happened. I just need to keep moving forward with the process and belief. So I know that that's something I need to say to myself almost every day. Keep believing, keep moving forward. So I share that with your audience as well.
Awesome, Kimberly. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. Such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Constantine.
Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of personal transformation. Your presence and engagement are at the heart of what we do, and I sincerely appreciate you, your time, and thirst for knowledge, inspiration, and empowerment. Please consider showing your support by hitting like, subscribe, leaving a comment, or writing a review. Your engagement not only fuels our mission, but also helps others discover these insights. For more daily guidance on personal transformation across the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical realms, be sure to visit our website at unleashthyself.com. You can also find us on Instagram at Unleash Thyself Today, TikTok and YouTube at Unleash Thyself, and there we post daily content designed to inspire and empower you on your journey. If you have any specific thoughts, questions, or feedback, I truly value your input. I would love to hear from you. Together, we're building a community united in authenticity and purpose. Once again, thank you for being a part of this movement. Until next time, continue to embrace your true self and live a life on purpose, with purpose. See you in the next episode.